Hello everyone, and a very good morning or afternoon depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you very much for coming along to this webinar introducing the new research and writing skills for undergraduate projects and theses collaboration. We should be taking about 45 minutes of your time today, including an opportunity for a designated question and answer session at the end. If you are familiar with the GoToMeeting software that we are using, you might know that there is a questions option as part of the panel on the right-hand side of your screen near the bottom. If you would like to ask questions as and when they occur to you, please feel free to type them up and send them over via the pane there, and we're quite happy to take those as we're going through. We're also making a recording of the webinar available as well, so if you wish to view it again or share it with your colleagues, that will be an option for you. This will be available early next week. At the moment you are all on mute because the feedback can sometimes affect the quality of the sound, so if you do have any questions or issues you would like to raise, please do so in the question panel that's part of the GoToMeeting program setup on the right-hand side of your screen. So firstly, just a couple of introductions. That's me, Sarah Vaughan, on the right-hand side. I work for Epigeum, the organization that put together the online courses, and I look after the webinars as well. A large part of my role is looking after our collaboration and implementation workshops, as well as our product launches and online events such as this. I'll let Laura in the middle and Julio on the far left introduce themselves now.
Hi everyone, my name's Laura Dent. I'm Head of Publishing at Epigeum, and I'm responsible for really scoping out the opportunities for new programs and developing the courses.
Good morning, I'm Julio Rivera. I'm a professor of management, marketing, and geography at Carthage College in Kenosha, Wisconsin in the U.S., and I'm the lead advisor for the project.
Just a quick look at the agenda before we get started. First, we'll look at Epigeum itself. We're the organization that puts together the programs through a collaborative model, which is quite unique, and Laura will talk you a little bit through how our approach works later. I will give you a bit more information about the company, our history, and where we are now. Then Laura will talk to you in a little bit more depth about the research and writing skills for undergraduate projects and theses program, the origins for this project, and introduce a development group and collaboration model to you. After this, Julio will give you an overview of the research and writing skills for undergraduate projects and theses program, in which he will discuss the vision he has as lead advisor. Then we are back to Laura, who will cover some of the features and timelines for the program. Following this, we will show you an existing Epigeum course so you can get a feel for what that might look like. In this case, it's another studying program called Avoiding Plagiarism. We will then wrap up with a question and answer session. As I mentioned in the beginning, please do feel free to type up your questions in the questions panel on the right-hand side as the webinar progresses. So a little bit about Epigeum. We were founded in 2005 as a spin-out originally from Imperial College London. Our two founders created the company in response to what they felt was a lack of timely support for researchers. One of our founders was doing a PhD at the time while working full-time, and he came across issues that he wanted and needed to be advised on. And it would either be that there would be a face-to-face course in 3 months' time that was being offered, or that there was inadequate material online that didn't quite fit what he needed. So he saw this as an opportunity to work with universities to create supported materials for researchers, particularly PhD students and postdocs like himself. And that's where we started, in this sort of research arena within higher education. In the 10 years since, we have expanded to studying programs, courses for students, and teaching programs. We were acquired by Oxford University Press in May of this year. Oxford University Press are actually a division of Oxford University, so we're still within the not-for-profit organization in a higher education context and still very much focused on creating high-quality materials. In the decade since we have been formed, we have created over 78 online courses across 12 different programs, and we have currently 7 in development. We're an increasingly globally focused organization and have worked with over 260 universities across 29 different countries worldwide to date. We've worked with many in the United States as well, and this is a map to show you what countries we have been involved with in the development of our courses. So hopefully that's given you a bit of background to Epigeum, and I'd be happy to take any questions on the company, but for now I'll hand over to Laura, who will talk to you about the foundations of the program and the collaboration model.
Thanks, Sarah. I wanted to spend a little bit of time speaking to the group about our collaboration model, because I think we work quite differently from a lot of traditional publishers out there. So we actually partner with universities to develop our programs. And we truly believe that by bringing together subject experts, academics or professional teams, we can share best practices and experiences to develop a better, more premium program than if we did it in isolation. So for every program, we bring together a group that comprises our lead advisors, so Julio, for example, who works with us to really shape our strategic vision and make sure we're steering the ship in the right direction. We bring together authors and reviewers, and as you'd guess, they are the ones responsible for actually writing and developing content. And then there's obviously our own Epigeum team of editors, developers and designers, and we really focus on the user experience and really shaping the learning pathway for the student as they work through the content. But right at the centre of this is what we call the development group, and that's really our partnership with leading universities and subject experts. So for this new collaboration or this new program, we're inviting universities to join our development group. And essentially, universities who join the group invest and become a stakeholder in the program to help us shape and create the content. Now, when I say you get to help us shape the content, I don't just mean you get to demo a course just before it launches, or you get to just feed into content when there's very little opportunity to make a change. You do get significant input throughout our development process. And I just wanted to share a little bit, or a bit of a quick overview of what our process is to explain this. So for this program, for example, we've drafted some initial learning outcomes and outlines for each of the courses within the program. And that's a result of conversations that Julio and I have had, or a result of conversations we've had with various universities about what their challenges are in this area and what their students need. Now, at the start of each program, all the development group members, all those partnering universities, come together at a workshop to refine these course outlines further and to really nail down the coverage and the approach of each course. So your input at this point is really important. We all come together at a workshop. The authors go through their course outlines in detail and we discuss the approach. And this is really the time for you to kind of share examples of best practice, or to share your experience and really help us develop the course. So for example, you might think that a specific topic is quite difficult and maybe we should approach it in a slower way, or you might have an example of an activity that you've carried out with your students that has worked really well and is something we could replicate in an online version. So we have a 2-day workshop where we go through all the outlines and the content, and by the end of it we've agreed the detailed coverage. So going back to the process, as a result of all the feedback from the workshop, the authors go away for a couple of months and they write the course content. And then they share draft storyboards for peer review. So you get to see the content, you get to see the briefs for learning activities, and you would get to see scripts and descriptions for videos and video scenarios. So this peer review stage is really important for letting us know what works, what doesn't work, what we can improve, what we can make clearer, for example. So once we've done that peer review stage, we'll go away. The authors will revise their content. We'll put the courses into development, so we'll start planning the design, developing the interactives and filming the videos. We'll then beta test the courses, make sure it all works smoothly, make sure the user experience is smooth and successful, and then we publish the courses, and Epigeum will work with you to implement the courses and the program at your institution. So essentially, we move from Word documents, which are course outlines, where you get to input right at the start and help us shape the content, through to course design. And Sarah will be showing you some examples of the design in our approach later on. So we have presentational and interactive activities. We have polls, discussion forums, videos, and because it's an HTML5, you can also use the courses across laptops, tablets and phones just to fit around the needs of a busy student. So one of the questions I often get is specifically what does a development group member do and what is the time commitment? Each member would participate in a launch workshop. So the authors would work on their course outlines ahead of the workshop, and we'll send those to you to have a look through and to think about whether that approach suits the context at your institution. So probably a couple of hours just to have a read through the outlines. And then we have the main workshop day where we refine and agree the detailed curriculum. Generally that's sort of one day of sessions, possibly a welcome dinner beforehand or a networking breakfast the next day. Then, as I explained, you get involved in peer reviewing the materials as they're developed. So again, I probably say 2 days just to work through the storyboards. You might want to speak to other team members at your institution who would be involved in implementing the program or working with the students and get their feedback. So you get the sort of the institutional context captured in your feedback. And then you can, if you're interested and if we can get all the logistics to work out between us all, you can have students and staff from your institution appear in the course videos. And that's a really nice way of personalising the course content for the student as they're working through it. So finally, the benefits. Firstly, as I mentioned before, it's premium interactive content, and we believe that by coming together and by sharing all our experience and all the best practices that you've developed at your institutions, we can develop a much better course and a much better program. By joining the development group, you get an unlimited license in perpetuity, and essentially you get the flexibility to use the content however best fits your needs. So that can be a campus-wide offering. You might want to create different versions of the course to target different cohorts. You might want to customize some of the content, better fit your needs, and we can work with you to help you add certain screens of content or perhaps delete screens if they're not relevant for your specific needs. As we've talked about, you get significant input into content development, and really significantly we'll work closely with you on implementation, training and technical support to make sure that you get the course embedded into your institution and up and running and meeting whatever goals and needs you're setting out to achieve. So that's a bit of an overview of our development group model. And what I wanted to do at this point actually was hand over to our lead advisor Julio, who will explain a little bit more about his experience and his vision for the program.
Thank you, Laura. I want to take a few minutes and talk a little bit about my background, not a lot of time, but just to let you know that my roles in undergraduate research and student research have been wide. As a faculty mentor, I've mentored a number of students through undergraduate research, and that's probably the core of my experience. But I also serve as a consultant to schools and faculty building undergraduate research programs, and I'm often called by schools to come in and evaluate their program. And these are schools of different sizes and types, 2-year institutions, 4-year institutions. I've been active in the Council on Undergraduate Research. You may be aware of CUR. I was its president a couple of years ago. It's a very large organization that encompasses really the scope of higher education and in its member institutions and its faculty. And I also served as Chief Academic Officer of my institution for 4 years. And so I come at this whole process both from a faculty perspective and an administrative perspective, and that these two pieces have to work together in order to get good support and to move it forward. And if you're interested in doing research with students, you need support from both ends. And so one of the things I like about this program is that it provides both kinds of support in terms of administrative support and faculty support. I want to talk a little bit about undergraduate research more broadly, and oftentimes, and I think still it's thought of as being something that, well, nice small little colleges like the College of Worcester and places like that, Mount Holyoke, that's what they do. They work with their senior theses, and it's for them. I think one of the things that I want to make sure that people understand is how widely this mission has been adopted in the U.S. and Canada, and thinking about that as a practice that has developed over time. If you look at Kerr's involvement in this, it mainly started in the natural sciences, but has developed and focused in all disciplines. In fact, some of the strongest disciplines are in the humanities at the moment in terms of growth and real excitement about undergraduate research and working with undergraduates in research. If you think about the types of undergraduate research and the types of things that this program would support, and we're looking at, we're looking at things like summer undergraduate research, which is a common thing at a number of campuses where you have a group of undergraduates who are working with faculty in the summer on real research projects over time. The traditional independent study research projects are part of this. Senior theses, capstones, dissertations, those would be part of this. But the fourth part, I think, is probably one of the more important pieces in this, is that the real growth in undergraduate research over the past several years has been curricular-based. How do we build undergraduate research within the curriculum and make it part of the curriculum to be more analytic, more rigorous, and moving toward a more active way of teaching and working with students and teaching students through research. And so this particular model supports that. One of the things I want to point out is where the context of this is, and why it becomes important, not just for undergraduate research, but I think in the larger political realm of the U.S. in particular, is that a few years ago, George Koo, in association with American colleges and universities, put out 10 high-impact practices. And these were not new, or these were not surprises that these particular practices had profound impacts on student growth and student development. But it was the first time that someone had actually kind of put them in a list. And a lot of colleges and universities have really begun to emphasize these as part of their practice. Your institutions may be instituting these as part of their practice. Undergraduate research is one of these, but also undergraduate research complements these in a number of ways. Undergraduate research can be part of a first-year seminar. It can be part of, you can build writing-intensive courses that are part of undergraduate research. Collaborative projects often are undergraduate research. So that one of the things is that undergraduate research is one of these, but it also ties closely with others. So if your institution is looking at these as a possibility, think about high-impact practices and combining them with undergraduate research in different ways. One of the things that's happening in the U.S. is that a number of institutions have begun to move, increase their undergraduate research because of accreditation issues. The purple area and the light blue area are two areas in the U.S. that are doing this. One, the Southern Association of Accreditation, and the purple is the Higher Learning Commission. Both have quality initiative programs where within the accreditation cycle, they can choose a project. A number of institutions are choosing to do undergraduate research projects. And so this particular type of curriculum would help institutions support faculty and students in those programs that they're developing. If you're going to think about how this program would be used, one of the things that I think is most important and probably the leading idea within higher education right now in undergraduate research, is building undergraduate research into early experiences for students, particularly in first and second year programs, and at both two-year institutions and four-year institutions. And allowing students to develop the skills and build the skills required for undergraduate research at early levels. This would, in many respects, put them ready to take on internships in the summer. It would put them in ready to work in research contexts at other universities, both when they graduate and during their time. So one of the real advantages to this particular program is that it would support these curricular models of developing undergraduate research. Also, it would support senior theses. Also, it would support the traditional summer undergraduate research experience, particularly getting students ready before they come to campus. One of the things that undergraduate research program directors say is that there is a ramp-up time, and they could use a program like this to help them get students ready to hit the ground running when they get to campus in the summer. And of course, it would be good for traditional independent studies. One of the things that for me is always the most rewarding piece is this particular moment. And I see this at my own campus, and I see this when I go to national conferences where students are presenting their own work. This is a moment that is so important for students to get their work out either on their own campus or in a public venue where people are talking to them about their work, where people are asking them questions. It's a great moment for students, not only in terms of their confidence, but also in terms of developing them as young scholars and young professionals. And the building blocks for this particular work come from faculty time, but also in terms of providing support for faculty with quality materials, with an ability to kind of make sure students hear and understand what it takes to do good research, and allows them to be able to put that into practice across disciplines. And this program helps them do that. And my portion, I think, is set here. So.
Thanks, Julio. I think it's me again. It's Laura here, everybody.
Okay.
So thank you very much for sharing your vision. I wanted just to move on to looking a little bit at the program outline. Now, I know some of the people joining us today might already have received some of our marketing material on the outline and approach for the program. So I won't go into lots of detail, but we're very happy to take questions afterwards if there's specific queries you have regarding topics. So, as Julio said, this program is really about being proactive in supporting students through common challenges. We're looking at a program of around 5 hours of core online content if they were to work through from start to finish, but we've broken those into 30-minute modules so that the content is accessible, is relevant, and the student can go right to the challenge or the topic where they need support. So the program is aimed to guide students through the entire process from starting out with your advisor to actually managing your time, thinking about project management skills, how do you approach that, through to thinking about ethics right at the beginning when you're starting to work on your thesis or your research project. We're also featuring 3 modules around research methodology and methods. So students can learn about research design and methodology and analysis before going into qualitative and quantitative research methods. And we're aiming to give students a general grounding about the methods available and an understanding of the paradigm of the methods before they later go on to specialise in a specific discipline approach. And then finally, we have modules around writing up your research, thinking about how you might present your evidence, develop your argument, how you might disseminate your findings. And there's a few key features which I also wanted to highlight. There will be examples in the programme relevant to a range of disciplines. So we're intending to actually use examples and extracts from undergraduate research projects and theses, and to use these really as a way of modelling and asking students to comment on what works well, perhaps how they might improve a research question or what they might do differently. And we're also looking at including some collaborative options around that, perhaps assigning activities to discussion forums where students can work in groups to analyse and look at these extracts. Student and advisor experience will also be really key throughout the programme. We are planning to incorporate a range of video content with students and advisors talking about, what worked well for them, either when they were doing their own research project or what they look for in research projects, what worked well, what didn't, maybe what they wish they knew at the start of the process. And then finally, an application theme. So we want to reinforce the transferable skills that students are gaining and developing when they do their undergraduate research project or their thesis, or perhaps just undergraduate research generally. So we're going to reinforce those skills and make sure students recognise them and can articulate them through to potential employers. So in summary, this programme is really about being proactive and supporting students through the process from start to finish and hopefully demystifying the process and some of the common challenges.
Thanks, Laura. I'd like to now give you a demonstration of one of our existing programs so you can get a feel for what our courses look like and also some of the features that we include. So Avoiding Plagiarism is a program that we released about a year ago to an international market, and we're currently working on a US version for institutions based in North America. If you want more information about this course, you'll have details of the person to contact about at the end of this webinar. So this is our Epigeum portal where we host our courses. Most institutions prefer to have them in their own LMS, such as Moodle or Blackboard, but this is in our portal, and you can see how you and your students will be able to access the courses when you log in. So I'll start by showing you this welcome screen. This is what we have at the beginning of all our courses to set the scene for the students taking the courses. We start with a list of authors here, so you can see who has written the materials. The learning outcomes, the structure of the course, some of the highlights to look out for, and also a list of all the supporting institutions who have helped create the course. So, starting with the first main screen of the first course, I'll begin by highlighting a couple of features relevant to all our courses and screens. At the top of every screen, we have a learning outcome, so that students are aware of what is going to be covered in the screen and what they should have learned or should be able to do after completing that screen. We also offer an estimated duration for each screen. Here it's 6 minutes, so that students have an idea of how long it is likely to take to work through the screen. Now moving into the main screen content. This screen introduces the student voice into the course. We start with a text entry activity in which students taking the course can consider some key questions about plagiarism and note down their answers. This encourages reflection on their own existing knowledge, and it also encourages them to note down their thoughts, and it keeps the learning active. Then they move on to a video in which real students give their thoughts on the same questions. We try to use video as much as possible in our courses as it really helps to bring the material to life. This particular instance offers course users the opportunity to compare and contrast their own responses with those of the students featured in the video.
Plagiarism is fact. Copying somebody's exact words, it's academic fraud.
For me, plagiarism is basically stealing someone else's idea and passing it off as your own.
So video is short and vox pop style, and it is engaging and interesting for students taking the course to hear what their peers have to say. It's worth noting here that all videos also have a transcript, which you can see by clicking on that button there. On a similar note, all our course screens have a text version, so the course is fully accessible for those using screen readers or who are unable to use the interactive version for any reason. You'll see on the right-hand side of each screen we have these little boxes, or as we like to call them, pods, which contain supplementary information, links, definitions, activities, and so on. The type shown here is an optional activity pod, which invites students taking the course to extend or reflect on their learning in some way. In this case, we've suggested that they set up a discussion group with other students taking the course so that they can discuss issues that come up as the course progresses. This can help e-learning students feel like they're in more of a learning community. This next screen here, it shows off a really nice feature of this course, which we use throughout many of our programs. Comic strips which help to explain key learning points. So in this case, poor old Tekla has written down a third-party quotation in his notes without a reference, and then goes on to reproduce the quotation in his essay as though it were his own, which is then picked up for plagiarism by his teacher. We've had feedback from students who have taken the previous version of this course requesting more imagery, and we found these comic strips to be effective and engaging in other Epigeum programs as well. There's also a nice example of one of our interactive activities on this screen. So this is a decision tree which students taking the course can follow to help them decide how to appropriately quote, paraphrase, cite, and reference. They're asked whether their works contain any third-party material and then answer the questions yes or no to find the correct course of action. This activity helps to build up a thought process to help ensure that students always quote, paraphrase, cite, and reference correctly. This is an example of a screen which provides an opportunity for students taking the course to apply, test, and consolidate their learning. There are two quizzes on this screen drawing together concepts covered in this unit. So this one is a multiple choice quiz in which the user is presented with an example piece of material and then asked to decide whether or not they would need to acknowledge the material if used in their work. Users can see their score as they work through the quiz and receive feedback on each question. So this activity presents students with a piece of academic writing, followed by various revisions of the text. Students have to decide whether each revision contains plagiarism or acceptable usage. Feedback is provided for each example. So this kind of interactivity is a great way to keep students engaged and helps them to apply the principles they have read about to some real-world examples. As Laura mentioned, we also have appropriate disciplinary areas available for students to choose from, so they can work through examples which are more relevant to their course of study. So this screen explains the difference between citations and references and how to compile them. This activity provides an opportunity for students to practice inserting correct citations for a variety of different sources. Examples are taken from a variety of disciplines as well. This kind of activity helps to keep the learning active as well as engaging. Now, this second activity here allows students to examine and understand all the different elements of an academic reference for a variety of different materials. Again, these are taken from different disciplines, and so students can apply these to their own context. Now you can see that there are a lot of different pods on this screen. I'll just talk you through a couple of them. The useful links pod here, there are a lot of these pods throughout the course which offer links to useful online resources that students can consult. This is an excellent way of providing an opportunity to explore topics in more depth without bloating the core course material. Then we have your context pods here. In default mode, these encourage students to find out their institutional departmental guidelines in relation to a particular learning point. However, these pods are customizable, so universities can insert institution-specific text or links to the relevant resources, so students have all the necessary information to hand. Finally, on this screen, I'd like to point out this Do This icon. We use this icon as a means of highlighting points of particular importance for students. Finally, this is the last screen I'll be sharing you. So the idea here is to provide links to a variety of articles about real-life cases of plagiarism, both to pique students' interest and show them how damaging the consequences of plagiarism can be. Again, this page is hosted by Epigeum, so articles can be swapped or removed if the links become inactive. I hope I've given you a good taste of the course content and some of the pedagogical features within that demonstration. If you have any questions, please do jot them down now or feel free to contact someone at Epigeum after the webinar. I'd like to now have a look at some questions that people have asked. Okay, the first question is for Julio. How would you use this course in your own work at your school?
Well, for me, there are a couple contexts that I use it in. I work with students individually on research projects, and we do a lot of community-based research as well. And students want to get involved in research, and oftentimes they're not ready. They don't have the requisite skills, but they're excited, they're smart, they're interested. And so rather than walking them through material in my office or sending them off to read something, like read the introduction to research, big thick book. This particular course, I think, is interactive. You can work with them individually, as well as the other context where I'll use it is I teach embedded undergraduate research. And so for me, using these modules in my classes as pieces for students to build off of become very important. So for me, the multiple contexts and the multiple ways that this is used becomes important. The other thing that I think is, and I'm returning to teaching after being in administration for several years, that it also reflects the shift that I've seen in students in terms of how they want to absorb information, both in text and in video and in sound clips. One of the things that I have done is I've been polling my own students since I've returned, like, what do you like? How do you learn this stuff? And there's a difference, and this particular program reflects that. I'm excited to work on this and get going with this.
Great. And also another question for you. Why does this make sense to use in the context of today's students?
I also think that, as I mentioned before, today's students, they have a, if I think about my own self as a student, I was immersed in books and I was immersed in research by digging through a library. This is not today's students. They're still just as active and just as analytic in a variety of ways, but they are better in tune with getting information from a variety of sources and a variety of different media. And so, as one colleague who I was talking to about coming back to teaching statistics, she told me, she said, it seems that my students are learning statistics from online videos rather than from the textbook. And she was fine with that. That was fine because they were doing well. So I think that between the online videos, between the written content, you know, the additional pieces, I think this fits today's students well, particularly students who have a whole range of schedules for work. For some, they are working full-time and going to school online. There are a variety of contexts where I think this works really well.
Great. Before we go on to our next question, I just want to remind everybody, please feel free to ask, type in their questions in the questions panel if they want to add anything, or if they want to have any clarification on the content of the course, or whether it's about our course structures and how the process is going to work. Please do feel free to type them up, or if you do think of them later, you can always email us as well. So the final question I have here is how would different institutional types or sized institutions use this differently?
Well, you know, one of the things that is, I think that if you think about institutions of higher education, there are a range of types. There are major research institutions, there are two-year institutions, there are mid-sized regional institutions, there are small colleges. There's, you know, and you could go into subgroups of each one of those. The beauty of this particular program, I think, is that it allows the institution to customize it to their needs. So if I were a major research institution and I had students doing research, you know, maybe 100 to 200 students doing research in different labs and with different faculty, as an undergraduate research program director, I could help faculty know about this particular resource, that the university has it, and that we're going to, you know, make it available to your students. Here's how you would use it. At a small college like mine, you know, it would be something that we would develop and use throughout the college to help students with senior theses. At a two-year institution, it would help because most students at two-year institutions often work. It would help get them into research early in those first 2 years, as well as be adjustable to their schedules and allow them to work on their own and bring those skills back to their work in their classrooms. You know, it's a nice fit, particularly with the customizable features for different institutions.
And just to add on the customizable features, as Sarah said, you have the option of customizing those pods to suit your specific context and to link out to perhaps specific guidelines or citation styles. And you also have the option to go a bit further and customize screens. So our technical and implementation teams can work with you if you think that you would like to spend a little bit longer on ethics around working with human subjects. Then we could work with you to add a screen and support you through that process. Or conversely, if you feel you might want to remove the screen because it's so relevant for your students.
Okay. Thanks, Julio. Thanks, Laura. I just wanted to show the final slide on this presentation. You can now see my colleague Fran Amar's contact details here. Some of you may have already been in touch with her in regards to this collaboration. So that's her email address and her telephone number. And Fran can give you a lot more detail in regards to pricing as well as timescales for the collaboration. So please do contact her if you have any questions regarding it. She's also able to provide you with a trial for one of our courses if you'd like to get a feel for how they look and function. We will send out a recording of this presentation to you so you can share it with the relevant colleagues who may find this of interest as well. So I think that's it for our webinar today. Thank you very much for listening in, and we hope you have a nice rest of the day. Thank you.